Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is a verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. As reported by inner-city press, millions have watched Ashton Kutcher play the charming pranks of the goofy heartthrob or the savvy tech investor. But on a humid spring morning in a Manhattan courtroom, that same man stepped forward. Not as a celebrity, but as a witness in one of the most disturbing celebrity trials in modern history, with Sean Diddy Combs facing a sweeping list of charges ranging from sex trafficking to organized abuse. Kutcher, once a member of Diddy's infamous Hollywood Rat Pack, had no choice but to take the stand. The silence filled the room, and then Ashton spoke. What followed left the court stunned. Kutcher wasn't just there to distance himself from Diddy. He was there to reveal something nobody expected, a shocking admission, a betrayal, and a secret that made change everything. This is the moment Ashton Kutcher turned witness. This is the story of the day. He broke his silence. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense unusually. So even for a case already saturated with bombshell revelations, but when Ashton Kutcher was called to stand on day 9 of the trial against Diddy Combs, the room shifted. There was a different kind of silence. Kutcher didn't enter like a Hollywood celebrity user red carpets and fanfare. He walked in like a man cornered. His tie was tight, his brow damp, his eyes scanning for an exit that didn't exist, because for the first time he wasn't on a sound stage. He was under oath. The media had speculated for weeks that Kutcher's name could come up. Years of photos, investments, and parting with Combs had resurfaced in the wake of Diddy's arrest, and Ashton's team had been working overtime to clean up the timeline. But no amount of spin could change what the prosecution had dug up. Kutcher's name appeared in correspondence, security logs, financial records, and most damning of all, in a handful of videos seized from Diddy's compound. Ashton Kutcher, the prosecutor, began. Do you recognize this image? Kutcher took one glance at the screen. It was grainy, but was in shirt, slightly unbuttoned, drink in hand, laughing in a dimly lit room around where faces blur for privacy. I do, he said, swallowing. That was in 2009, Diddy's white party. That was the first of many confirmations, and as his testimony unfolded, a carefully curated public persona began to unravel. Kutcher spoke calmly at first, but there was a tremble in his tone. I was friends with him. He said of Combs, I looked up to him, but there were things I saw, things I ignored. He explained how the so-called new Hollywood Rat Pack had formed. Diddy himself, Danny Masterson's son, Wilmer Valderrama. At first, it was partying, then it was business, then it was something else. There was a turning point, Kutcher said. It went from private events to things I'd call curated experiences, and I didn't ask enough questions. The prosecution asked if he had ever witnessed criminal behavior. Kutcher paused. I didn't know what I was seeing at the time. That's what I keep telling myself. But I know better now. He admitted that Combs often had a separate team working the back rooms, people who confiscated phones, directed guests to certain areas, and collected NDAs on site. Ashton revealed that even he had signed multiple NDAs over the years. I just thought that was standard, he said. Everyone did it. But then came the recordings. The court played audio captured during a party in 2013 at one of Diddy's homes. You could hear music, laughter, then Ashton's voice. I don't think we should be filming this, he said. Seriously, this is too much. Someone else responded, relax, it's all taken care of. They already signed. The prosecutor turned to Ashton. Who were you referring to? He hesitated, eyes darting to Diddy, who sat stone-faced at the defense table guests. Ashton finally said, some were models, some weren't, but they weren't told what was going to happen. Not really. By the end of part 1, Ashton's testimony wasn't just about Diddy. It was about complicity, about a culture of silence that rewarded those who played along and punished those who asked questions. And it became clear Kutcher had once been one of the former, but now in front of a judge and a jury, he was trying to become the latter. Ashton continued his testimony into the afternoon, this time detailing the infamous years of the new Hollywood Rat Pack. It was me, Diddy Danny Masterson's son, and Wilmer Valderrama. He said, we call it a new kind of brotherhood, but in hindsight, it was a machine. He recounted stories that at the time sounded glamorous private jets to secret locations, all-night benders in mansions with no clocks or windows. But these tales now took on a sinister shade. There were entire rooms at those parties where only certain people were allowed, and Ashton said, you had to be approved. I didn't ask who was doing the approving. The prosecutor pressed him. Did he ever see anything illegal, anything exploitive? Ashton exhaled sharply, not with my own eyes. He said, but I heard things, and I ignored what I heard. I laughed things off. I told myself it was just rumors. He detailed one incident in particular, a private yacht party in 2012. Diddy brought out a group of young women. Most of them were models or influencers. He said, they've all signed your safe. I remember laughing. I shouldn't have you talk about how the Rat Pack dynamics shifted. Danny got darker. He said, referencing Masterson's son, more paranoid, more controlling. Diddy and Danny were very close during that time. The court showed footage from Diddy's 2009 white party co-hosted by Kutcher. That was my idea. He admitted we were promoting charity on the outside, but behind the scenes, I think we were promoting something else entirely. He told the court that as time went on, even he started keeping secrets. You don't rise in Hollywood without learning when to shut up. I was making millions. I had a brand, and I didn't want to ruin that. He also explained how guests who asked too many questions weren't invited back. There was a guest list, and there was a blacklist. You don't cross Shah Combs. Everyone knew that. He even referenced a troubling encounter between a female guest and another celebrity whose name was redacted during court testimony. I asked if she was okay. She said, they told me not to talk. That stuck with me. Ashton began to tear up. Slightly, I'm here because I was part of the circle, and I saw enough to know something was wrong. And I didn't do enough to stop at the gallery. Sat in stunned silence. Ashton Kutcher long seen as a likable goofball, the tech-savvy investor, the doting husband, was now peeling back layers of a Hollywood secret few dare to confront. And it was only getting darker. Kutcher's testimony shifted from Hollywood gossip to direct exposure. The term freak off long rumored in industry blogs and anonymous posts became part of the courtroom lexicon. What's a freak off? The prosecutor asked. Ashton hesitated. It's an event Diddy would host. He said private exclusive phones taking guests blindfolded. Sometimes it was presented like performance art, but it wasn't. Not really. He described how he was invited to his first one in 2005. I thought it was a theme party. He said, I brought a date within 30 minutes. I regretted coming. He wouldn't describe everything he saw, but he did say this. There were hidden cameras. There were people who looked terrified. There were rooms you didn't walk into unless someone tapped your shoulder. The prosecutor brought up a detail from a seized laptop. Ashton's name was on a digital guest list tagged green. Light, it meant I was trusted. He said, I don't know what I did to earn that, but I knew what it meant. I could go anywhere. He also described being given documents to sign DAWs drafted not just for guests, but for high-profile entertainer security teams. Caters. The NDA I signed in 2010 was 28 pages long. He said, I signed it anyway. The courtroom listened as Ashton explained how difficult it was to step away. You're not just backing out a party. He said you're backing out a network, a power structure system. He recalled one moment in 2014 when he tried to stop attending. I told Diddy I was done, that it wasn't for me anymore. And he said, you don't quit, you're in or you're out forever. That same week, Ashton claimed 3 investment deals mysteriously fell through. I got a call from a mutual friend who said, you made someone nervous. Ashton ended with a chilling admission. I was afraid, not just for my career, but for my family. Diddy had reach, and people don't understand. He didn't need to raise his voice. All he had to do was stop returning your calls. That was enough to destroy someone. And with that, the courtroom broke for recess. But nobody moved because Ashton Kutcher, for the first time in decades, was finally telling the truth. Once the court resumed, the focus turned away from parties and into something far more calculated. The financial and business ties that had quietly fueled the lifestyle Ashton Kutcher and Sean Diddy Combs had constructed. This wasn't just about what happened behind velvet ropes. It was about what funded it. Kutcher had long been considered a savvy investor, from early tech startups to massive venture capital plays. He had positioned himself as Hollywood's bridge to Silicon Valley, but as he explained the network behind it all, a pattern emerged. Many of his deals overlapped with names now caught in the crossfire of Diddy's scandal in 2009. I started getting involved in more than just entertainment. He said, I was introduced to founders, fund managers, and Sean had connections most people didn't. It could open doors that even the biggest venture capitalists couldn't. He described how Diddy brought him into a circle of international financiers, brand developers, and nightlife mogul. They didn't just throw parties, they built companies out of them. There were branding firms disguised as clubs, investment groups disguised as lifestyle blogs. It was marketing, surveillance, and recruitment all rolled into one name came up repeatedly. An anonymous investor tied to several of Kutcher's ventures later discovered to have direct affiliations with Combs overseas. Business Arm's financial records showed large transactions labeled only as consulting or event services, but the destinations of those funds often aligned with dates of notorious private gatherings. Ashton also admitted there were shell companies he never fully understood. They told me it was to protect intellectual property. He said, but looking back, it was probably Hyde who was really funding what when asked why he didn't dig. Deeper, Ashton looked down. Because the money was good, because I didn't. Want to be the guy who asked too many questions of prosecution, laid out a timeline of investments from Kutcher's involvement in an exclusive tech hub in downtown LA to his partnership in a nightlife-focused app that folded shortly after receiving millions in funding that traced back to accounts now frozen under federal suspicion. Kutcher admitted he'd received updates from the app's leadership, but the user data they collected, names, locations, biometric info, had quietly been sold off. I didn't know. Ashton said, but maybe I should have. He also described one eerie moment in 2016 when he was shown a pitch deck for a new app developed by one of Diddy's associates. It was supposed to help talent connect directly with producers, but there was a page about discrete background checks and personality profiling that made me uncomfortable. I passed on that. One revealed wasn't just a story of bad parties. It was a full-on infrastructure that blurred the lines between Hollywood and darker interests, and in the middle of it all were names. You'd see our magazine covers holding awards on stage, while behind the scenes they were cashing checks signed in silence. As the years wore on, Ashton Kutcher's circle got smaller. The bond that once united the so-called new Rat Pack began to fracture, and not because of scandal, but because of control. It became clear that within this Hollywood fraternity, loyalty had a price, and betrayal came with consequences. After 2014, things changed. He said Danny Masterson's son became more paranoid. Wilmer Valderrama started distancing himself, and I started hearing whispers. He wasn't just referring to media gossip. According to Kutcher, people close to the group were quietly breaking away, not out of disagreement, but out of fear. One friend stopped showing up to everything. We thought he would just burn out. Then he called me and said, "You know too much, get out." Kutcher claimed that after he began declining certain invitations, events, investments, dinners, things around him shifted. Projects that were greenlit suddenly when dark PR deals fell through and certain executives stopped returning his calls. It felt like I was being quietly frozen out. He detailed a chilling encounter in early 2017 when he ran into Diddy at a charity gala. He hugged me, told me I'd been missing out. And then he said, "You should be careful about what you don't remember." That line stuck with me. Shortly after, Ashton said he received a USB drive in a blank envelope at his office. It was footage from a party in 2012, nothing illegal. Just embarrassing. I got the message. He admitted that fear started dictating his decisions. He didn't speak up. He didn't confront anyone. He just tried to back away slowly, hoping no one would notice. But someone always did. Every time I pulled away, something would come up. He said a tabloid leak, a hacked email, a threatened lawsuit, and I'd scrambled to protect my name, my family, but the deeper concern was what he couldn't protect, his conscience. Ashton recounted a night in 2018 when he got a call from a friend warning him that a civil suit was coming against one of the Rat Pack members. They said, "Don't let this get to you, we'll handle it." That's when I realized this wasn't just friendship anymore. This was damage control. He began distancing himself from everyone involved, quietly moving funds, severing ties, reworking contracts. But even then, the ghosts lingered. Business associates would still bring up Diddy's name with reverence. Tech founders would drop hints about private funding rounds, and all Ashton could do was smile and nod. "I felt like I was being followed by a shadow I couldn't shake," he said. And the worst part was I helped build it. By 2020, Ashton Kutcher had done everything to scrub his image clean. His investments were framed as altruistic, his media appearances lean, wholesome. His family life was staged like a postcard. But under the surface, he was running. He wasn't alone. The entire entertainment world was shifting. The pandemic forced stars to retreat. Scandals began surfacing. And eventually, Diddy's name was no longer whispered, it was shouted. When I heard about the first raid, Ashton said I wasn't surprised, I was relieved, but the relief didn't last because soon after came the subpoenas, the headlines, the social media accounts posting pictures long since forgotten. Kutcher's name was back in the mix, and this time no PR team could contain the damage. He described the day federal agents knocked on the door of one of his business properties. They had a warrant. They wanted access to archive footage, correspondence travel. Logs, I gave him everything. He also explained why he didn't speak publicly during the initial firestorm. I was scared not just of the legal blowback, but how deep it would go, who would hurt. The biggest blow came in 2023 when footage surfaced at a party once hosted by both Kutcher and Combs in Hamptons. It wasn't graphic, but it showed influencers being led by handlers into off-limits areas. Ashton on camera said only one sentence, just keep them calm until we start. When that clip surfaced, everything changed. That wasn't what it looked like. He said in court, we were running a branding shoot, or at least that's what I thought, that's what I was told, but public perception didn't care, and for a man who had built his brand on charm and trust, the hit was fatal. He lost endorsements, tech partners began distancing themselves, investment funds quietly removed him from board listings, and Mila, his wife, was reportedly livid. She begged me to walk away years ago. He said, I didn't listen. Ashton described how his kids began asking why strangers yelled outside their home, why news trucks camped outside. I had to explain things I couldn't even explain to myself. Ended not with a bang, but with a crumbling. A Hollywood A-lister once seen as untouchable, now watching his empire fall brick by brick, not because of what he did, but because of what he refused to see, and worse, what he refused to stop. Ashton's voice lowered as the conversation turned to someone he once called a brother, Danny. Masterson's son, the courtroom, felt the shift immediately. No one in the room needed reminding of Masterson's fate, convicted and sentenced. But what no one had heard before was how deeply embedded he was in this circle, how far the influence stretched to protect him, and how Ashton Kutcher was far more involved than he previously admitted. We came up together, Ashton began. We shared everything, work parties, even investors. He described how the years they spent on that 70s show weren't just about filming. Offset, it was networking. Danny was plugged into Scientology, Kutcher to tech and venture capital, Diddy to fashion and music. And at the core, they fused it all into one web of power that was designed to silence dissent. What people don't know, Ashton said, is how that power moved behind the scenes. When Danny was first accused, it wasn't just lawyers that got involved. It was favors being called in from people across every industry. I watched it happen. He recalled a particularly disturbing evening in 2017, just before Netflix dropped Masterson's son from the ranch. Kutcher said a private dinner took place in the Hollywood Hills. There were execs there, producers, a few artists, and one of Diddy's lawyers. The conversation wasn't about whether Danny was innocent. It was about how to keep everything quiet. Documents surfaced showing a sequence of communications between Kutcher and his team where he offered to manage optics on Masterson's behalf. I thought I was helping a friend, he said, but I didn't realize I was helping bury the truth. The court was shown a memo from a PR firm Kutcher employed in 2018 listing a plan to flood search engines with positive news stories involving himself, Diddy, and Masterson's in the campaign. Included celebrity endorsements, red carpet appearances, and even quiet donations to women's charities, all timed with specific legal milestones. I was scared of what would happen if the public turned on us, Ashton admitted, so I became part of the distraction machine. He paused before delivering one of the most haunting revelations. Yet there was a call in 2019. Danny was panicking. He said if things went south, he'd take people with him. And when I asked who, he just said, you know who signs the checks. I knew what he meant. Everyone in that circle did. By now it was obvious to everyone listening. This wasn't about Ashton Kutcher simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was about a man who had been close enough to the center to see the gears turning. He finally pulled back the curtain on how silence was bought and how it nearly bought his soul. Ashton described something called the cleanup crew. It wasn't one group. He said it was a system of strategy. There were fixers, drivers, private medics, publicists, legal shields. You'd walk into a mess, and by morning, everything would be reset. People paid, stories erased, sometimes memories too. He recounted an incident in 2015. At an event overseas, a guest had a medical emergency. A security team swept and removed her, and by dawn, the room she'd been found and had been remodeled. I saw the blueprint. Ashton said they covered the entire wall in mirror glass like it never happened. He explained that there were 3 tiers of silence: the hush fee, the job offer, and the threats. Some people got a new car, others got booked in a new series, and some just disappeared from the invite list. Financial records were presented showing Ashton had authorized payments through one of his LLCs to a media consultant who had coincidentally also worked on damage control for a Diddy-led fashion campaign around the same time. When asked why he did it, Ashton's answer was simple. Because I didn't know how to escape, he revealed that by 2021, he began quietly withdrawing from certain ventures. He severed ties with Diddy's associates, closed dormant businesses, even deleted a decade's worth of photos from cloud archives. But the deeper he tried to retreat, the more people questioned his silence. You ever try to delete a part of your life? He asked the problem, is someone else always as a copy? He spoke about a chilling message sent to his wife, Moniz. In early 2022, a photo of her with her children captioned with a line from a contract she'd never seen. It was a threat. It was a reminder that even if you leave the party never leaves you. He ended with Kutcher explaining why he was finally speaking out. Because I got tired of erasing myself. He said, because the longer I stayed quiet, the more I became one of them. Ashton Kutcher sat still for a long moment before speaking again. It was as if he knew what Part 9 truly meant, not just for the courtroom, but for the legacy of everyone still watching. This isn't about saving face. He said this is about saving whatever part of myself I still recognize. He was asked one final question. If given the chance, would he go back and change anything I would have walked away? He answered back, in 2005, the first time I saw the door close behind me at one of those parties, I should have left, but I didn't. I stayed. I played along. I smiled on carpets and pitched apps while people got hurt behind the scenes. He admitted he had sent letters to some of the victims recently not to ask for forgiveness. He said, just to tell them I see it now. All of it. Ashton turned to the judge before stepping down. Your Honor, he said, if there's anything this court needs from me, emails, records, names, I won't fight it. I've done enough fighting for the wrong people. A hush swept over the room. Even Diddy didn't flinch, because at that moment the courtroom wasn't filled with celebrities or moguls. It was filled with the echoes of what they'd all tried to bury outside the world was watching. And whether you believed Ashton was a hero trying to atone, or just another guilty man with a polished smile, one thing was clear: the curtain was finally being pulled on the midst of fame, and what stood behind it was far uglier than anyone wanted to admit.